Hey, this is Josh. This is video number 4 of my bookshelves, and this is a strange bookshelf. Uh, it's back to school time, a couple days before the semester starts, and usually I go and grab a ton of books and get all ambitious. Hopefully, like my students, but you never know. So we're going to go through this one. A lot of good old stuff here. Clear out some of these Star Wars guys. I'm as likely to have Star Wars books or fantasy as anything else here. So this is Bill Moyer's Language of Life. Dodge Poetry Festival every few years in New Jersey. Used to be an awesome event out in the countryside, and I went a few times, and that's the company's a video with that. John Gardner, strange fiction writer as well. But this is, along with Stephen King, Margaret Atwood, one of those books telling you how to write, which I guess, like with jazz, if you have to ask, you'll never know type thing. Almost unreadable text there, but the Norton Anthology of English Lit, Volume 2. Got to carry a bread loaf around campus once in a while, right? To look cool. The most hated book by students that I have. Moby Dick, Melville's, and I use a long-wind edition, and it's got some great notes. The reasons professors love it are the reasons students hate it. So what more need be said there? But I subject everybody to that. Pop fiction, self-help, who knows, 80s, The Tao of Pooh, applying Taoism to Winnie the Pooh, sort of a pop version of the Pooh Perplex, which is a book that applies literary criticism to Winnie the Pooh. This is a kind of a neat North Country sort of book. Richard Russo is a great writer of sort of rural fiction and Mohawk, sort of set in the North Country, so that's a good one. This one I picked up way back. Myths to Live By. It's got a neat chapter on 7 metals, 7 planets, 7 everything, great chain of being type thing, but it's a good popular version of that. Kind of a guy associated with Campbell is Jamaki Highwater. Words in the Blood is a Native American collection. So I teach Native American lit. I'll skip out here a little. Couple fun books. Trust Me, I'm Dr. Ozzy, and Douglas Adams, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. So, Trust Me. All right. Kind of a cool old book. Word Origins, The Romance of Language. Yes, how punningly fantastic, the romance of language. But yeah, I like to teach that kind of stuff. Black River Review. This is spring 2015. I think I had a few poems in that one. So that's a Jefferson literary journal that we put out each year. Browser's Book of Beginnings. Just the starts of things. So kind of trivial stuff. So I have a lot of that kind of stuff. I guess a similar vein. Heidegger and a Hippo Walk Through the Pearly Gates. It's a philosophical application to everyday life, and this one looks mostly at death. And the one I recommend is this is the second book by them, but Plato and a Platypus Walk into a Bar, which is a great book about philosophy and humor. So, yeah, I like this kind of stuff probably from my grandfather's genetics, who knows, but paradoxes from A to Z. Yes. Paradoxical that you could get A to Z of them and sell it. Who knows? Speaking of, whoa, this is being destroyed here. Speaking of paradoxes, probably one of the, some see them as superficial or self-obvious, but this is, I often use this essay from this book about 9/11 being predictable in hindsight only, and the difficulties of getting useful intelligence gathering going. So yeah, I like to use his off and on in class. couple classics. I guess we could pose those side by side if we can show them. I.A. Richards' Practical Criticism, and this is Bakhtin, Russian dialogic, literary critic, but basically looks at things in terms of dialogue and a back and forth, going back and forth. And a book I couldn't afford when I went to Syracuse, so I had to get it out of the library, but now I have it. And actually I've read it, so there you go. And of course I read it in school, right? Now, grad school, you basically read as far as you can and then run out of time and go to class and listen to know-it-alls hold forth on it. This is not a holding forth book. This is a book probably weighs as much as any 3 books in here. Gödel, Escher, and Bach, In Eternal Golden Braid. It's kind of like the book that some older brother might have, and actually my older brother did and read and understood, combining music and system theory and math, set theory, and Escher's, of course, his art, which we actually used to buy at poster sales and that kind of thing. So anyway, you can tell from kind of the cover how trippy it is and whacked out. Plays with fugues and Bach chapters that are built based on a fugue. Difficult stuff, and computer science kind of thing. Anyway, enjoy that. Making Your Own Days, poetry. Kenneth Koch is I've got a couple of his books. This How To is a good one. This is 40 cents. The Golden Apples of the Sun, weird stories, and you can kind of tell from these pictures, cheap, but wild Ray Bradbury stuff. Book I often use in children's lit, from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankenweiler. So kids that, it's sort of like Night at Museum. Kids go run off into a museum and find Michelangelo. All right, John Carter. This is not the actual John Carter book, but it's one my son got me, so I really keep and cherish that. But based on the flop movie, but neat premise. But it's not the actual original book version. So, oh yes, book number 3. Pat Summerall's All-Time Great Sports Stars Collection. True Value put these out. I still have them. Got them for Christmas once in one of the leaner years of our life, and kept it. Now, this is heavy. Actually, heavy duty in a couple ways. I got this at the Herman Melville Arrowhead Museum in Pittsfield, where he wrote Moby Dick. Herschel Parker did this exhaustive 2-volume biography. It's just huge. And I've gotten through this book, but not the second version, or the second one. And this is a book that gave rise to one of the courses I teach, which is Native American Lit. Housemaid of Dawn. A couple local stories from the town of Fine. Murder. Town of Fine. Wow, it would make us sound very interesting up here, huh? History of the schools in the town of Fine. I don't know, maybe less interesting. We'll see. We were going to do a video game last year of set in Cranberry Lake, and my friends and I was using those as sources. This is a book I kept from high school. No, elementary. Just weirdness of why you're cool if you're left-handed. My cousin Jen turned me on to this book, Ways of Seeing, which is also a web series you could check out, and looks at the commodification of art. Cool John Berger, great fiction trilogy he did. But this is sort of his sort of manifesto for why art got screwed up. And remainder are cheap book sale books. Finn McCool. And I don't know if you know John Hodgman. John Hodgman from formerly of the Jon Stewart Show. He just put out a nonfiction book in which his son wanted to do a tiki version of a tiki party for his birthday theme, and somehow he couldn't get any tiki torches. It was because all the idiots in Charlottesville were buying them to have their racist rally. So John Hodgman in this looks at the hobos as a worldwide conspiracy. It's a hilarious craziness writ large, but I love that kind of comedy. And this is one I use often. I might use it tomorrow in tech writing. Language myths, beliefs people have, like that they speak faster in France, or they're somewhere in the Appalachia where they speak like in Shakespeare. Some languages are more difficult than others. Some languages lack words for numbers or whatever. So this is another Penguin book, useful for that, and just a cheap poster book of Star Wars. So that's my miscellaneous shelf, and then the remaining thing is a maple wood box where I used to have a card catalog. I mean, how geeky is that to have a card catalog? But who knows what's in there? Besides, and here's a Spawn figure, so consigned to the scrap heap there. So anyway, that's my one row of books, most of which I've read, which I'm pretty proud of there compared to some. So hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.